The BlackRock ETF. It is. I had Larry and Caitlin Long on yesterday, and Caitlin Long basically said that she's like, it's a big nothing burger. And I'm like, why is it a big nothing burger? She's like, because I'm afraid of rehypothecation. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. Like, what are your guys' thoughts on the BlackRock ETF? James, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a risk long term, the rehypothecation. You know, using that asset to then lend out, and you know, we've seen issues in the big banks of this for gold, for instance. You know, it's been a problem. But short term, look, the institutions are coming. It's just reality. It's what it is. They're coming for Bitcoin. They're getting more comfort around it. They're getting more understanding around it. And they really, the big thing is that you have massive amount of consumer interest around Bitcoin in particular. And that along with the sightline of getting some sort of regulatory clarity around it is giving these big companies comfort that they can get into it. It lowers their personal risk. It lowers their reputational risk, you know, and they can get on board and start offering this. When BlackRock has an ETF, it's not going to be BlackRock buying it. It's not going to just be BlackRock and their funds buying it. They're going to be offering it as an ETF to the street, which means that the important part about this, and this is the part that everybody kind of focuses on, and it is important, is that it's an easy on-ramp for investors who have not been able to get into the space yet to be able to buy Bitcoin without worrying about all of the issues that come with buying Bitcoin if you're in a small institution. What's a small institution? Well, that's like a small family office or a mid-sized family office that doesn't have the capability or the they don't have the comfort around custodying their own Bitcoin, their asset. And so as fiduciaries managing this family office of money, they can't just go out and buy Bitcoin and then let it sit at Coinbase and feel comfortable around it. You know, they can't go and buy it and then self-custody it, put it in a wallet and feel comfort around that themselves. It feels too risky to them. They don't understand it well enough to do that. And there's a lot of hurdles to get over that. When you're an institution, and I've talked through this before, you have to go through a chain of approvals in order to buy Bitcoin as a separate asset class. What do I mean by that? Well, you start out with a portfolio manager who has interest in this. Say one of the analysts comes and brings a portfolio manager this idea, says Bitcoin, shows them all of the Sharpe ratios, how it lowers the long-term risk of the portfolio, raises the risk reward of the portfolio, and it's compelling, and they understand it as a separate asset class. And the portfolio manager says, okay, that's great. I understand it. I want to buy it. So what does he do? He goes to the chief investment officer and says, I think we should be buying Bitcoin. And the CIO says, whoa, wait. There's a lot of risk around that. You've seen what has happened with this, the meltdowns of these exchanges, the fraud, the nefarious activity. We've got to pump the brakes here. Let's go through the proper approvals and make sure that we're doing this the right way. When he finally gets on board and he understands it and he says, okay, I believe I agree with you, we should do this. Well, then they've got to get their compliance on board. And compliance means their chief compliance officer or their general counsel. And that means that they've got to get everything in order. Who's going to buy it? Where is it going to settle? How are they going to pay for it? Where are they going to custody it? Who's going to be control the keys and the custody of it? Those are all the things they've got to get. It takes a massive amount of brain power and time to get through all of that red tape to get the approvals for these institutions to finally do it. So when you have small family offices, registered investment advisors, the RIAs that want to buy it for their clients, that want to buy it for their customers, they can't because their hands are tied. They literally cannot do it. But when a ETF comes out that's a spot ETF that actually has the underlying asset that's attached to it, that's easy. They can go on the New York Stock Exchange or a NASDAQ, buy it, settle it at their prime broker, done. It's in their client's account. It makes it a huge superhighway on-ramp for that kind of capital. That's the front end of it. The back end, Greg, you can talk about rehypothecation and some of the dangers that can come with it, but that's the front end of it, in my opinion.
And Greg?
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Here's everything James says, summarized in one, I guess it's a word. It's called QSIP. And every single financial asset in the world has a QSIP if it's traded by an institution. But Bitcoin doesn't have a QSIP in the United States. And to put a QSIP on Bitcoin via a BlackRock ETF that does all the things that James talked about, actually allows Bitcoin to be integrated into the portfolios of these institutions. It's simple to monitor. It's simple to isolate your risk, measure your risk, put it in something called NakamotoPortfolio.com, which is Alpha Zeta's, Swan Bitcoin's CIO, about how it's going to improve their portfolio returns at the same time as decreasing portfolio risk. I mean, that's the optimal thing, right? That's all, everything James says. So yes, that's true. Okay, rehypothesis. Has anyone ever audited the total supply of gold? No, you can't. There's so much gold out there that people don't even know whether it's actually tungsten, painted gold, or how much gold is in Fort Knox, that you can rehypothesize blind ledger easily, to the point where JP Morgan is something like short more than, I don't know, I saw something like close to 75% of the market cap of gold via the GLD. Okay, that's rehypothesis. In pure buying and selling, lending, assuming all the BlackRock shares, ETFs were borrowed, you could lend out 100% of the BlackRock ETF if all of the shares were borrowable, which means there's 2 times the supply in the BlackRock ETF. But that's it, because it is audited to the Bitcoin that BlackRock has to hold on their balance sheet that is real Bitcoin. It's not fake Bitcoin. I am not concerned about rehypothecation. Yes, it will happen, but compared to the other advantages of creating on-ramps that'll eventually lead to self-custody of Bitcoin when these guys figure out that's the way to hold your keys, I'm quite bullish on it. I'm so bullish that I'm going to tell you how much Bitcoin is going to, how much demand is going to flow into the US market in Bitcoin. You want to know the number?
Hit it with us, Greg.
50 billion.
Holy crap.
Why? Because in Canada, where we're 1/10 the size of the USA, 5 billion flowed into the market. Math. 50 billion.